Welcome back to This Week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford. Pat Callahan joining you on JAKIB Sports YouTube channel. Give me a follow, please, at TWIPF Pat. And everyone will recognize this gentleman. It's an honor to have him on the show. That's the NFL Hall of Famer, four-time Emmy Award winner, author of the Eagles Encyclopedia and his latest book, Finished Business. And, of course, the prolific and longtime WIP host and NBC Sports Philadelphia studio host. That would be Reid Didinger. Ray, it's great to have you on. Thanks for joining me.
Always good to be with you, Pat. How are you doing?
All right. I'm fine. Thank you very much. I was just looking back, getting ready. I remember, Ray, many of your columns from the Philadelphia Bulletin. Now, you and I are, we're dating ourselves just substantially here. But the Philadelphia Bulletin, Philadelphia Daily News. Do you miss those days of those print days when newspapers were king in Philadelphia?
I miss those days. People sometimes ask me, do I miss the newspaper business? And my normal response is, I miss what the newspaper business used to be.
Right.
It's very sad now. I mean, newspapers have totally lost their influence and their impact. I mean, when I first got into the business in late 60s, there was no sports talk radio, there was no cable TV, there were no podcasts, there was no ESPN. It was purely a newspaper world, and the columnists and the beat writers, they were the opinion shapers. We had all the power, and it hasn't been that way for a long time.
No.
But I look back on those days. I mean, I was a newspaper guy for almost 30 years. And I really think, Pat, that I got the way I kind of look at it, I kind of feel like I caught the last really good wave. At the point where I came in and the point where I went out was really kind of the best of newspapering. I mean, there were four newspapers in the city of Philadelphia. Fully functioning and competing with each other. You had the Inquirer, you had the Daily News, you had the Bulletin, and you had the Philadelphia Journal. And they were all publishing every day, and they were competing like crazy and spending money, and there was lots of space. And it was really fun. It was really exciting. But those days seem like long ago.
Yeah, man, boy, and how many of those years too did you have to cover a team that was going 2-12 every year with Pete Lisk as the quarterback, and yet still people couldn't get enough. People still couldn't get enough, and there were 60,000 people in Franklin Field every Sunday, no matter what the record was.
Yeah, my first year of covering the Eagles was 1970, and that was the last year at Franklin Field.
Yeah,
and then 71 they moved into the vet. So timing wise, it was really fun. I got to see them play that last year at Franklin Field. Yeah. And then I got to see them move into the vet when it was new and exciting.
Yeah, that's right. State of the art, right?
And the teams weren't particularly exciting, as you said. They weren't very good. No. But then I was able to cover them all the way up through the Vermeil years. When he came in and took that team, and the job that he should have been put in the Hall of Fame just for what he did in Philadelphia. I mean,
that's true.
Kansas City and St. Louis. He had great success there too. But what he did in his time in Philadelphia, getting that franchise back on its feet, was almost a miracle.
That's true. All right, Ray. Let's get to the present day here. Philadelphia and Kansas City, a huge Monday night game. And the Eagles traveling now to Arrowhead to play the defending Super Bowl champions. Let's take a look at the Eagles at the bye for just a minute. What would you say the Eagles, and I'm comparing them to the Super Bowl team that went last year. Mm-hmm. Tell me, where do you think this team is superior to that team last year, and where do you think this team is notably weaker than that team from last year?
Superior? I don't know. I think they're pretty much the same in a lot of areas. I think they're very good on the defensive line. I think the addition of Jalen Carter, even though Javon Hargrave was a loss. I mean, he was a really good player, but I think Jalen Carter is better. And I think he's just going to continue to get better. And that defensive line, with the way Sweat is coming on, I mean, he's just getting better every week. And I think that the defensive line might be better than what they had last year. And that's and that's pretty good, because the defensive line was strong last year. I think it's even better this year.
Yeah.
The one area where I would say it's a concern that's not as good, and it's the secondary. They really miss. Gardner Johnson was, even though he's only here the 1 year, was a better player than I thought he was. I knew when they signed him, I knew who he was. And I thought that he would come in and he'd play okay, but he was better than that. He really helped them last year. He made a lot of big plays. Right. And when he left, they haven't been able to replace him. The combination of him leaving and then some injuries, that secondary has been kind of a muddle all this time. Yeah. And right now, you look at the numbers; they're pretty ugly in terms of where their pass defense ranks. And now you're going into a stretch where these next few weeks. You're going to get some quarterbacks that can light you up. I know. So there's going to be a lot of pressure on the new defensive coordinator to patch that thing together, because the next 2 weeks they're going to be up against some quarterbacks that can really do some damage.
I know, and that's going to put out a pressure, as you just mentioned, on the Eagles' defensive line. But it certainly did work out for Howie, Ray, because they were able to replace Hargrave with Carter. That's 4 years of let's face it, a bargain rate with Carter as opposed to what they would need to pay Hargrave. But Ray, let's take a look too, though. I want to take a look at the opposing coach, because look, we hear a lot of talk about Andy Reid. We do, but I don't think the magnitude of the numbers really comes to the fore with this guy. He's now 4th all time in wins as an NFL head coach. 276 and 156 all time. 2 Super Bowl wins. Where would you rank this guy? Because all you know about the Mount Rushmore of coaches, and Shula and Lombardi and Hallis. How do you see Reid ultimately viewed as as one of the top tier NFL head coaches?
It's right there. I think that there's no question that he'll be first ballot Hall of Fame selection. Has to be. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned, he's the 4th winningest coach right now, and he ain't going anywhere. He still loves coaching. I've seen him interviewed where he talks about how he still loves coaching, which he does. And he ain't walking away from Patrick Mahomes. That's for sure. He's got a great young quarterback there that's got a lot of football ahead of him. So, Andy, he could go back to 4 or 5 more Super Bowls and win a couple more and add even more luster to that record. It's so funny. I remember I covered his first win with the Eagles in '99 when they beat the Cowboys at the old vet. And I remember him in the locker room with a towel around his neck, holding the game ball up that Jeff Lurie had presented him with his first NFL victory. And to look at him then and to think that there wasn't anybody that day that was projecting that down the road would be putting him in the same sentence as Paul Brown and Vince Lombardi.
That's true.
But that's the truth of it. You can't argue against the numbers. The numbers are there. And I know there's some people that still are critical of him, but not me. I think he's a great coach, and maybe the best 30 minutes of his coaching career was the second half of the last Super Bowl. When he brought his team from 10 points down with an injured quarterback and was able to win that game. That may have been Andy's finest hour.
Yeah. One thing I think, though, Ray, you might lay on Coach Reid is he may, in fact, have missed an opportunity to upgrade his wide receiver position for 2023. And let's face it, the way the game is played today, you have such an unbelievable advantage if you have a top flight wide receiver, because generally he's either going to catch it or there's going to be a flag on the field. Is the fact that Kansas City is challenged at wide receiver, how beneficial is that for the Eagles Monday night? Because we talked about the fact their secondary is struggling.
It helps. Looking at this team now, the way they're constructed, I'm talking about the Chiefs, it reminds me a little bit of his Eagles teams. when he was trying to win games with Todd Pinkston and Charles Small, and we talked endlessly about the fact that what are you doing? I mean, you have this young quarterback that is obviously the trigger man of your offense. You clearly want to throw the ball. I mean, that's your philosophy. Why would you be lining up with such mediocre wide receivers? And then finally, they went out and they got Terrell Owens, and lo and behold, they went to a Super Bowl. Right. I look at this Chiefs team now, and it reminds me of the same kind of thing. It's a team that clearly wants to throw the ball. You got a great young quarterback that can get it there, and you're playing with a very, I'll be kind, a pedestrian group of wide receivers. Yeah. And every time I look at that, I think this reminds me a lot of the team that we saw in Philadelphia.
Yeah, it's a great analogy. It really is. And they have, let's face it, they got the reigning MVP who earns every bit of it. Mahomes is a special quarterback. Matter of fact, this is really a rare week, probably maybe the only time, Ray, when the Eagles may not have the best quarterback on the field. And that's a position that Eagle defense is not used to being in.
Right. Oh, yeah. He's special. There's no question about that. He makes some plays that only he can make. You saw that. I remember thinking that with Favre. When you watch the young Favre, in the course of a season, he would make a half a dozen plays. He'd say nobody else could make that play.
Right.
Nobody. Right. Now the difference between them is that Mahomes doesn't make as many mistakes as Favre. Favre, for all of his greatness and all the big plays that he made, made a ton of mistakes.
That is correct.
A coach once said to me, I thought he had the best description ever of Brett Favre. And he loved him, but he said, Brett Favre is a quarterback who keeps both teams in the game. I thought, and it's very true. When he was playing a quarterback, the Packers were never out of a game because he could always bring them back. But the other side of it was they were never safely ahead because he could make
exactly right. And you could point to the playoff games against Philadelphia here when he threw up to a couple terrible interceptions. The game against the Giants in that freezing cold game when he threw a terrible interception. So you're certainly right about that. This guy does not do that. Ray, I want to ask you something else too about just a look around the NFL since we started that just a minute ago. I noted at the top of the show how 6 games this past weekend were decided by a field goal on the last play of the game. And yes, for red zone viewers and the like, it generates tremendous interest and the drama that is the NFL. But what I wanted to ask you as a guy who's been watching football for 7 decades or so are these fantastic finishes, to quote that old Harry Callis segment that used to be on Sundays, are they covering up the fact that there's some bad football being played in the league this year, particularly at the quarterback position?
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I was talking to Ron Jaworski, in fact, right where I saw you at the Otho Davis dinner that night when we were there, and Ronnie and I were talking. Right. And I said, is it just me, or does it seem like the quality of play across the league this year is not very good? And Ron said, I agree with you. It's not. You can offer up a lot of theories as why, but what strikes me is when I read on a Monday after the games are played on Sunday, and I'm reading all the different wire service stories of all the different games, all the different accounts of the games. Right. Somewhere, if there are a dozen games, 13 games, 16 games, however many games are played, you read those stories. Somewhere, Pat, I guarantee you, somewhere in the first 5 paragraphs of that story will be a quote from usually the coach, but sometimes a player, where he says, well, it wasn't pretty, but we found a way to win.
That's true.
Now, we're all saying that in Philadelphia this year. Yeah. After every Eagles game, it's sort of well, it wasn't pretty, but we found a way to win. That's not just here. Yeah. That's being said in every winning locker room around the league. So, what it tells you is that's the NFL right now. Yeah. Teams are winning, but do we have any really truly great teams out there?
Yeah.
I mean, the Eagles have the best record. I mean, that's 8-1. That speaks for itself.
Right.
But was anybody going to say, yeah, that's a great team? I don't think so. I just think it sort of reflects where the league is right now. And the other thing, and this is another topic for another day, but the officiating around the league this year is really awful.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been not very good for a while. Yeah. But I think this has been a particularly brutal year for officiating.
Yeah, I agree. I think it has been a bad year for officiating, and it's just a bad time for that, right? The social media is consumed by the NFL. And every missed or made call, bad call by the officials is a Zapruder film that is just broken down and broadcast to 50 million people.
Sure.
But I don't know how, Ray, the league has been trying to fix this forever. And, I don't know, full-time refs. I don't know. What is that going to do? I don't know. But I don't know how the league I hate to see, quite frankly, Ray, I'd hate to see the league get more automated in terms of its officiating. I just think these guys, especially when it comes to roughing the passer, which there have been 65 roughing the passer penalties called this year, and I'd lay a wager on you, Ray, that maybe 20 of them were actually roughing. The league's got to straighten some of these penalty issues out. You're right.
Yeah, they do. And look, and I know you are too. I'm all for player safety. I really am. I want to make it a safer game. I want to. I want to minimize the long-term down the road CTE issue. I would like to see the players being able to walk away from the game healthier. I'm all in favor of that. But there are things that happen within the game, and roughing the passer is a perfect example where you just say, "Oh, come on." Yeah. There are times when you barely brush the quarterback, and a flag is thrown, or it's completely. It's unavoidable. I mean, the defender's coming in, and just the law of gravity. He can't stop. I mean, he hits the quarterback. He's trying to hurt him.
That's right.
Here comes the flag now.
That's right. Yeah. That's up in midair, right?
Yeah. That's all over the field. You see the defenseless receiver calls down the field and all that kind of stuff. But it goes double at the quarterback position because people are trying to keep your quarterbacks in the game. And even with that, we've had 10 rookie quarterbacks starting.
I know.
For the first half of the season. The most, even as much as you're trying to protect the quarterbacks, they're still going down.
Now, Sal Powell was quite adamant about it. He's on this show quite often. He told me never in the league have there been so many different quarterbacks have started an NFL game by this time in the season. And it's something, Ray, I'd love to have you back on. We could spend an entire hour talking about the quarterback position in this league. I'd love to do it with you. What are you? I know a guy as energetic and dynamic as you are. What are you up to these days? Are you in the midst of another project? Is there anything else you're doing relative to football that you want to get out there?
Well, I'm still doing stuff at WIP. They still bring me on, a couple times a month to just usually to sit in. With the camera and Richie in the morning. My old partner, my longtime partner, Glenn McNeil, calls me from time to time and asks me if I'll, do a segment on a Saturday or a Sunday when he's with Mike Sealski or Jody. So I still do that. Right. There is, I've done three different editions of the Eagles Encyclopedia. And if the Eagles win the Super Bowl, the publisher has already talked to me that if they win the Super Bowl this year, which not out of the question, we're going to have to turn that puppy around and get a fourth edition of the Eagles Encyclopedia out in the bookstores for next year. So I'm already filing some paperwork and some notes and setting some stuff aside just in case, because I did it last year. I had a lot of stuff already written last year when they went to the Super Bowl so that we could do the quick turnaround and have the book out. And, turns out they didn't win that game.
That's right.
I think there's a real good chance they're going to be back in it this year, and who knows?
That's right. All right. Well, I hope to have the chance to talk to you about it before that happens, before the season is over. I certainly appreciate you taking all this time today, Ray. It was great having you on. I wish you the best of luck, whatever you're doing. Look forward to seeing you again. All right.
I look forward to it too, Pat. Always a pleasure being with you.
All right. Thank you very much. The great Ray Didinger joining me there. Lengthy segment. I appreciate Ray taking all that time. Just an absolute encyclopedia of professional football. It was great to have him on. I'm sorry, Sean Green. I've been holding Sean up. He's way too valuable for that. We'll bring Sean on after this quick break. We're going to talk about his favorite team, the Big Blue, the New York Giants, and the Cowboys. He's a big Cowboys fan too. We'll talk about that, and Eagles Chiefs. We'll do that all next on This Week in Pro Football, presented by Kennedy Ford.